Now, what is happiness? Happiness is a pleasant feeling in the mind. I eat something sweet, it brings a pleasant sensation to my mind. I hear music that I like, it brings a pleasant sensation in my mind. This is what is commonly called happiness. Doctors, psychologists, priests, monks commonly will tend to agree on this simple definition. Now, if I eat the same sweet that made me happy or hear the same music that I like during a time where some sort of tragedy has occurred in my life, I'm not going to enjoy it. Again, if I lost money in the stock market or if a relative has passed away and if someone plays the music that I like the most, I will probably say, stop it, turn it off, I hate this. The same music fails to bring joy and happiness. So happiness is something which is personal and dynamic. It's totally dependent on the person concerned. Happiness is subjective. It's not objective. The same person, place, or thing that brought happiness at one time may bring misery at another. Why does this happen? This happens because we are responsible for our happiness or sorrow, and not the external objects of the world. We think that somebody brings joy, this person brings misery, etc., etc. All this really isn't true. And we know this intellectually, but it's hard to practice throughout the day. The external persons, places, and things are only stimuli. These stimuli affect the brain and bring joy or sorrow in us, depending upon our state of mind. Thus, all our so-called loves, hates, ambitions, dislikes, successes, failures, and so on are for our own sake, created by us. When we say we love or hate others, it is for our own sake. It is a truth according to Hinduism that all that we do is for acquiring bliss for ourselves. Now, Hinduism has some things to say about happiness. Ordinarily, what we call happiness, or sukh, and misery, dukh, are relative experiences. They're dualities, like we've talked about before. We must rise above these dualities in order to discover and experience real happiness. Where do we find this real happiness? It is inherent within each one of us. Which leads us to the question, where is it located? Answer is, it's not really located as such. Just like when you search a brain for an observer, there is no location for an observer. The feeling of an observer is the result of all the complex interactions. It's part of everything. There's no separate duality of observer and observed. So happiness really isn't located anywhere. It is we ourselves. And I know people ask ourselves. I would ask that question. And the answer is, yeah, we are of the nature of bliss. And what exactly does this mean? It means we are happiness. Our nature is one of immortal bliss. We've just forgotten this simple truth. Then what is this experience which we are calling happiness? The so-called happiness is only a faint reflection, a little spark of the brilliant bliss which is hidden within. This is only a shadow of that eternal bliss that is waiting to be exposed. Our so-called happiness and misery now are nothing but different states of mind. The Bhagavad Gita says, "He who is unattached to the external world and its objects and is attached to the inner self will attain supreme happiness, which is everlasting." Real happiness, called Anand in Sanskrit, is the goal of all beings. All are seeking that goal only. Some ignorantly, some with knowledge. And it is easier said than done. We have this knowledge. It's been told to us, but out of habit. It's still easier when we have money problems to seek out more money, when we're lonely to seek out sex and comfort from others. It's unfortunately natural. We want power, prestige, freedom, control. So therefore, according to all the different philosophies of Hinduism, yoga, Vedanta, dualists, non-dualists, our goal is to transcend these dualities like happiness and misery and reach the state of supreme bliss. It is in that state that we get real bliss. Until then, we are only passing through different states of mind. We may restate the ideas in the form 2 or 3 simple laws. 1, we seek what is true and lasting. And then 2 and 3, I guess, the more you seek what is true and lasting, the more you go nearer to the source of the supreme everlasting bliss, which turns out to be within you. Now this leads us to the question, does this world bring happiness? Can we actually get happiness out of life? Can we actually wrest satisfaction out of life? We mentioned that the happiness we get in this life, in our day-to-day lives, is very elementary. It is only a shadow, and the real one is elsewhere. It is only a door, which leads us to misery and pain. This may appear pessimistic, but unfortunately, it is a truth. What we call pleasure or happiness in this world is only an introduction to the pain that will follow. So if we seek happiness here, we must be ready to receive the pain that follows it. I know many people get very angry, but this is unfortunately, if you actually collect the data on what happens, this is what's going on. We are all in a vicious cycle. There should be an end to moving about in this vicious cycle. That end comes when we understand that this world is not everything. We must also understand that this world is a teacher, teaching us to get what is true and real. This world is a showroom which gives us samples only. So the world, with all its glitter and shine, is only a showroom which stimulates sensations in our mind, and we think we are happy or sad. The Buddha said that this world is misery, dukh. According to the Buddha, everything is misery. Birth is misery. Living is misery. Death is misery. World is misery. If you feel this way or have felt this way, don't beat yourself up. It's not that you're being pessimistic. It's more realistic than you think. But understanding and accepting that everything may be misery is actually liberating. You may not want to share these thoughts with others because others don't want to hear it. But now, part of the liberation is knowing that, secondly, everything may be misery, but everything is also momentary. When one attains liberation according to Buddhism, one becomes extinct. Liberation means to become extinct, or nibbana, and to end our misery. But there is no permanent entity according to Buddhism. Everything is coming together and everything will disintegrate. All the schools of Hinduism, on the other hand, say that life is not merely misery. The external world no doubt brings sorrow according to various schools of Hinduism. True. But according to the Vedas, the sources of Hinduism, life is bliss. You see how they pick one or the other? And I have to argue that maybe it's actually irrelevant. It's neither misery nor bliss. But let's go on. The Vedas say, from bliss did things come into being. In bliss do they exist. And to bliss do they return finally. Everything is bliss. There is a wonderful mantra in the Vedas. The air is filled with sweetness of ambrosia. The oceans are filled with sweetness. The plants and trees are filled with sweetness. And everything is filled with the sweetness of ambrosia. So according to Hinduism, everything is bliss and not sorrow. Now, how do we reconcile these ideas? The end result of both have been very successful in liberation and gaining happiness. So the Buddha was speaking about the world as it is now, and the Vedas speak of the ideal we are to attain. So they're not necessarily contradictory, again, breaking the duality. In the ordinary sense, in the world we are living in, it is all misery. It appears to be glittering and shining. We appear to be in paradise, but we see that we are chasing a mirage here. Ask those who are of old age if they're happy. They're not going to say from their heart that they're happy. Nobody's happy. In spite of all our dancing and drinking and enjoying the world, ultimately we see that nothing has been achieved. This is what the Buddha also said. In order to overcome sorrow and suffering and enjoy everlasting bliss, we must look elsewhere.